you for taking out time, of course, of presenting your analysis, your perspective with us on NewsX World. On that note, viewers, we're shifting focus to some breaking developments coming in from Peru. We're now learning that at least 37 people have been killed and 24 others injured when a bus collided with a truck and plunged into a ravine along the Panamericana Sur Highway in southern Peru's Arequipa region. The regional health manager, Walther Oporto, has confirmed the death toll, calling it one of the country's worst road tragedies in recent years. The victims were being treated at nearby hospitals as authorities launched an investigation into the cause of this particular crash, which occurred on a steep and winding stretch of road connecting Peru with Chile. And more news coming in. The UN's nuclear watchdog, the International Atomic Energy Agency, has now called on Iran to urgently allow inspections of its nuclear material inventories, particularly its stockpile of highly enriched uranium. According to a report, the IAEA highlighted that it has lost access to facilities affected by military attacks and that verification of previously declared material is long overdue. As of June 13th, Iran's stockpile of uranium enriched up to 20% is estimated at 184.1 kilograms, while uranium enriched up to 60% stands at 440.9 kg, both levels posing theoretical risks for nuclear weapons development if further enriched. Now, the agency also noted that inspections have only resumed at facilities unaffected by strikes, leaving continuity of knowledge gaps at critical sites. The IAEA has also emphasized that Iran must report without delay under the Non-Proliferation Treaty to restore transparency and address serious international concerns. Joining us on the broadcast now is Mr. Jordan Cope. He's a Middle East affairs expert joining us from Dallas. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. What do you make of the revelations that the IAEA has made that it is not allowed to monitor the 3 nuclear sites that were struck by the United States earlier this year towards the end of the 12-day war?
Iran has made the excuse, as have others, that the inspection sites are not under the right infrastructure to visit right now, and that might actually pose a risk in terms of the foundations of the facilities and whatnot. But what is clear over the last few years, as demonstrated by Iran, is that it has no demonstrated commitment to international legal principles nor to the treaties which it has signed on to. One must not forget that Iran is a member of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. It still decided to pursue nuclear weapons. One must not forget that Iran was a signatory and a party to the JCPOA nuclear agreement of 2015. And just because the United States might have left, it doesn't mean that that the treaty wasn't binding upon Iran as it was to other parties. Iran nevertheless decided to escalate and to enrich its nuclear uranium and it decided to enrich its uranium stockpiles to up to 60%. It was believed that in earlier months, Iran had approximately 400 plus kilograms of 60% enriched uranium, enough to produce at least 11 nuclear bombs. Rafael Grossi, the Director General of the IAEA, has ultimately noted that even now as we speak, Iran has potentially enough material and capabilities to still produce some nuclear weapons. Nobody knows what has happened ultimately to the 400 kilograms of 60% enriched uranium and what has ultimately happened to those stockpiles. But Iran has made clear that it has no intention of completing its nuclear program. Under the JCPOA, Iran was allowed to enrich up to 3.67%, reminding you now that its stockpiles have now reached up to 60% in some cases. And so Iran has ultimately demonstrated a complete refusal to commit to the treaties to which it is a party to. It has no intent to respect international legal norms when it comes to enrichment policies, and it must be considered a threat. As the New York Times has noted, it's likely that war potentially could resume in the Middle East with Iran in the future, given its refusal to surrender its nuclear capabilities.
Indeed, we've also seen an interesting phone conversation take place recently between Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov and Iranian counterpart Abbas Araghchi. This phone call focused primarily on the E3 nations, Britain, France and Germany, which of course had triggered the snapback mechanism at the UNSC. On the other hand, we've also seen some interesting statements coming from leaders from Iran that have practically left the door open for negotiations with the United States of America. I want to understand from you, are the economic impact of the sanctions as well as the current water crisis that we're seeing in Tehran driving this now? Is the Iranian administration worried at the moment?
I think they could be. And I think going back to your point, why has the Iranian regime not allowed inspections at Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan? Well, it's possibly likely that despite Iran's claims that the damage to the key nuclear facilities wasn't so sufficient, perhaps it was more damaging than the government is making it out to be, and it can't afford future humiliation, especially right now, as the country experiences one of the worst droughts it has experienced in recent memory. There are tremendous videos, and tremendous being horrifying, of dam levels being so low that people have actually walked in some parts across the water supply. But it's very worrisome for populations throughout Iran. But Iran also at the same time is very concerned in terms of the economic situation. Sanctions had been restored as of late September 2025, and allowing IAEA inspectors to inspect certain facilities surely is performative and for show to try to re-engage the Europeans into considering whether they want to continue those snapback sanctions for the long-term future. And so it remains yet to be seen ultimately how these inspections will manifest in the future. I don't expect any future invitations to Isfahan, Fordow, or Natanz, but one must also remember that in 2020, Iran ultimately allowed people to inspect certain facilities such as Marivan, but at the same time, they violated the JCPOA by having nuclear stockpiles passed around various sites in Iran that were ultimately considered secret at the time.
Mm-hmm. Indeed, I'd like to digress a little bit over here. There was recently a plot that was revealed by US and Israeli intelligence agencies regarding an attempted assassination against an Israeli diplomat, the Israeli ambassador specifically to Mexico. The US agencies and Israeli agencies revealed that Iran was basically using its diplomats, its staff in the embassy in Caracas, Venezuela, to plan this entire plot and execute it, which is now being thwarted, of course. Iran has come out and so far denied that it was planning anything of this sort. But in the larger scheme of things, what do you make of the revelation? Do you think, and the timing of it specifically, do you think it will help the United States gain some sort of leverage if talks do end up taking place down the line?
I don't think Iran's plotting of Israeli officials around the world is anything that is so completely surprising. Iran has proxies not just throughout the Middle East, but also those who are active in Latin America. Hezbollah, for instance, even though it's primarily located in Lebanon, has fields of activity in South America, and part of the way it fundraises for its mission is ultimately through the cocaine trade and through the narcotics trade, which runs heavily throughout South America and through which Hezbollah has found partners and has a strong presence in the tri-border region between Paraguay, Argentina, and Brazil. I don't think this will add any necessarily additional leverage for the United States. The United States is committed right now to stopping Iran and its Shiite Islamist project throughout the greater Middle East and cutting funding and supplies that have gone from Iran through Iraq, through Syria, and ultimately to Lebanon, where Hezbollah remains active and is trying to rebuild its capabilities right now, potentially for future war in Israel, and in fulfillment of its ultimate mission of destroying Israel in the process. And so, to answer your question succinctly, I don't think it adds any new leverage. However, it's not surprising. And Iran also has been involved, or at least its proxies have been, in targeting Jewish institutions and Israelis around the world. One must not forget the Hezbollah AMIA attacks in Argentina when they attacked a Jewish community and killed many innocent people. There's also been plots by Iranians throughout Europe to gather intel and potentially plan attacks against Jewish communities in Europe.
Indeed. With that, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Jordan Cope, for taking out